Leave something out and you're preaching, you can fix it. So one thing I forgot, there's all these booklets in the back. They tell what's going on all winter here at our church. Grab one. That's the end of announcements. Let's pray together. Father, we now go into a challenging topic, and we just pray that you would help us. For some people, their guard is up to level 1,000 right now, and some people have secrets that they've hidden and suppressed. Some people are hurt. Some people are mad. Everyone in this room is here. They're looking for something. And so would you break through anger we may have, break through hardship we may feel, just wondering why we're even sitting here. How did we even get here this morning? And would you give us all something? Your word pierces all things for those who are willing to listen. Help us to listen. Amen. All right, good morning. If you have a Bible or a smartphone or whatever device you have or just in your head, turn to the book of James. If you don't know where that is, just look towards the end and start making your way backwards. I had a brain freeze in the first service. I couldn't find it for a couple minutes. So just know that sometimes your pastor can't beat his kids to finding the passage he's preaching on. And if you're a visitor, I just want to say welcome. You've come on a Deep Waters Sunday, and I'm glad you're here. But I am just issuing the warning. This is a tough topic. This is not an easy topic, and because the statistics are what they are, I would say that there's someone here, probably a couple people, who have had an abortion or in this room, or know people who have had abortions or have pressured a girlfriend or a child to have an abortion, and you've been sitting on that quietly, and you're just not sure what to do with that feeling. Or you've had abortions impact your family. You have a missing sister and you know it, a missing cousin, a missing nephew or niece, and you've just kind of tamped it down. Or you're tracking the due date of that child year after year after year, and you just wonder, what would they look like now? What would it be like? And if you're grieving, there's mercy here. And if you find yourself with your guard way up because you do not understand the pro-life argument, I'm glad you're here as well. This is the right place to be. So let's start with the question. Where does the definition for human rights come from? Where's the grounding? Where's the modern definition? Now consider this letter I'm going to read to you from 1 BC, June 17th. It's a letter from a husband to his wife. The husband's name is Hilarion. He's stationed in Alexandria in Egypt. He's in the military. He's writing home to his wife. He's telling his wife, money is coming. Watch over our children. And if you're pregnant with a girl, leave her outside and get rid of her. Hilarion, heartiest greetings to Alice and to my dear Boreas and Apollinarion. Know that we are still in Alexandria. Do not worry if others return and I remain. I beg and beseech you, take care of our little child. And as soon as possible I receive wages, I will send them to you. And good luck to you if you are to bear an offspring. If it is a male, let it live. If it is a female, expose it. You told Epaphroditus, don't forget me. How can I forget you? I beg you, therefore, not to worry. Throwaway sentences in personal letters say a lot about the ethics of a culture, and I'm guessing you might think to yourself, what did I just hear? But in the first century, this was not shocking or illegal. Disposing of newborns was family planning. If you had a girl, if you had a child that was born with a deformity, like missing arm or some birthmark or anything, or it was just something you couldn't afford, you could discard the child, expose it to the elements, and let it die. Aristotle, the famous Greek philosopher, weighed in on this issue, saying this, as to exposing and rearing a child, let there be a law that no deformed child shall be reared. The Greek practice of exposure was undergirded by a view about what a human being is. And that is a utilitarian view, that it is based on capacity, strong over the weak. And that they have to have certain abilities. And that barely self-aware newborn is not equal to other human beings. Humans are only should have protection if they can do certain things, if they can reason in certain ways, if they can make moral choices, and therefore there is a hierarchy. And the bottom line is, not everyone has the same worth or value. So how did that practice end? Well, Christians in the first few centuries came along and they began to argue something different, and not a functional definition, but an image of God definition, that all human beings, men, women, children, are all born in the image of God, and because of that, they have intrinsic value and worth and dignity. And so these Christians began picking up these discarded children and taking them into their own homes, and taking these orphans into their homes and raising them. That is, there are people in this world today that are only alive because Christians took these exposed children in the Roman Empire into their homes and raised them. A completely different set of ethics based on the image of God. These Christians cared about women. They didn't force women to get remarried if they were widows. They trumpeted their rights. They cared for children and redefined the value of children. They took care of the poor, not only their poor, but the poor of the Roman world. They were against abortion and infanticide, all because of one doctrine, the image of God, totally at odds with the Greek world. And in 374 AD, after 300 years of doing this, that practice was banned because of Christians. The entire idea of human rights comes today from a Christian ethic. That doesn't mean Christians have been perfect throughout history. We've had our ups and downs, okay. But today we're talking about real faith now from the book of James. What does it mean to be an authentic follower of Jesus according to Jesus' own brother? And we're doing it in the context of the anniversary of Roe v. Wade, which was yesterday, Right to Life Sunday, and about what does it mean to protect people who are not receiving any protection. Now, just a little intro to this book. Some people love the book of James. Some people, Martin Luther, the famous reformer, threw James in a lake because he was so frustrated by it. You try to read James, and it's just all over the place. And if you're the kind of person that can't follow a single train of thought, James is for you. If you talk like that, maybe James makes perfect sense to you. You know, Paul, he lays out his arguments in Romans. Nice, they make perfect sense. But then there's James, and he's just like, and this, and this. Oh, now back to this, and this. That's James. James is the Lord's brother. He's the leader of the Church of Jerusalem. He's the first among equals. He's the man, okay? And he's about to die in 62 AD, and he writes this book. And one of his biggest issues is what we say with our lips versus what we do with our lives. And he's going to repeat that over and over and over again. Now, just to kind of give context here to verse 27, what we're talking about, he is giving a bottom line litmus test. What does it mean to be a genuine follower of Christ? And he gives essentially three things. One, a controlled tongue. Two, caring for orphans and widows in particular. And three, personal holiness. And I'm guessing that if you've been in certain churches, they may have emphasized one over the other. Like you have your personal piety group. We need to be abstaining from the world and kind of, on our own kind of holiness level. And then there's other people who are like, we need to do social work and orphan care. And then there's other groups, we need to really watch our tongues. So you kind of have these bifurcations, unfortunately. But here we are, those three. Now, one last thing to set it up. James is not going to argue here, which would be antithetical to the Christian faith, that if you don't do these, you're not a Christian, like a checkbox. Like, oh no, I didn't control my tongue, I'm no longer a Christian. Oh, I did, now I am a Christian. Oh, orphans and widows this week, but not next week. I'm living a holy life, but not a holy life. I say that because just a few verses earlier, James is not going to define Christianity as charity work. He's going to define Christianity as birth. That is, something has changed in people's life. That's verse 18. You can read it yourself. The basic message of Christian faith is God comes, initiates a relationship with somebody, and totally transforms them to the point where Jesus will say it's being born again, total transformation. Here, James, the Lord's brother, will say it's like birth, and the way that you are born is through the word spoken, and that because of that, now you become, the text says, first fruits of those who are created. So, there's something that's happened in someone's life. God's initiated a relationship so much so that God has literally birthed you in a new way, transformed by the word that is spoken. Your life gets transformed. Now, what is the litmus test that that's actually happening? Here it is. First, worthless religion talks a lot. Worthless religion talks a lot. Now, I need to say something at front end here. If you are super excited because you're a quiet person and don't talk a lot, I'm coming for you too, okay? So don't get all super excited. The Bible has a lot to say about people who don't talk a lot. A lot about motives in the heart. Okay. James has a lot to say in his book about speech, more probably than any other topic. He keeps coming back to it. Remember that kind of like ping pong back and forth? Speech keeps coming up over and over and over again. This tongue, full of deadly poison, the thing that sets the world ablaze. I mean, I meet people in this church and just in my life who are older, and you can define that however you wish. Okay, they're older, and they remember the cruel things said to them in junior high. They remember it word for word. And those words have somehow shaped their entire identity. I have a friend who played professional football, and he says he can still remember his coach in high school saying over to him, "You're not good enough. You're not good enough. You're not good enough." And guess his whole identity became what? You're not good enough. You're not good enough. And it pushed him to excel. It created something in his heart that he was never accepted unless he was good enough. And there are words that maybe have been said to you, poison, from parents, from friends who won't even remember what they've said to you, and it's so taken into your heart that it's just made you who you are. That's the tongue, this little tiny thing in our mouth that can absolutely shake us. We also use the tongue to say things that are truthful in order to smash people. There's an old poem that says this: a truth that's told with bad intent beats all the lies you can invent. A truth that's told with bad intent beats all the lies you can invent. That is, you can say something to someone that is truthful and absolutely crush them. Crush them. You know, the tongue works in a lot of different ways, and I feel like it's easy for me to convince people they are sinners when they stop talking about how someone else's tongue has affected them, when I start talking about their tongue. How do I know you need Jesus? You opened your mouth this week. The problem goes two ways, and here it is in James. First one, the unbridled tongue, the person who can't shut their mouth. You know this person. It may be you. The tongue says things that are boastful, things that are slanderous. James 3, with the tongue we bless God and we curse people. James 3:6. And every time I read this, I go like, James, take it down a few notches. The tongue is also a fire, a world of evil in all the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole person, setting the course of one's life on fire. It itself sets a fire and is itself set on fire by hell. I mean, just think of the things that came out of your mouth this week. Not what other people said, what you said or thought. The tongue is a great revealer for what's in here. I mean, it is amazing to me how even something as simple as a lack of sleep can impact how we talk. Amy and I, when we were new parents, we used to have a rule. Anything said between 10 and 8 a.m. is essentially forgiven because we were crazy nuts. We were saying things to each other that were crazy. Why? Because the gate got lowered and we're super fragile people and things started coming out of our mouth just because we were tired. The stress levels in your life, the ability to not hold back what is in your heart. I mean, I was thinking this week, why are elder meetings at 6:30 in the morning? Because sometimes in the morning I say stupid stuff. And why do I say stupid stuff? Because I'm tired. We gossip, we talk about others, we accuse ourselves, our tongues are accusing ourselves and others. And if you're a person who doesn't talk, it's still in your mind. You can easily be accusing yourself. But there's another problem with the tongue. It's the tongue, it is the social media keyboard warrior tongue. It says all the right things and does nothing. You say the right things in praise. You say the right things in preaching. It's just kind of like thoughtful meandering. Everyone's just kind of patted on the back, good for us. And then we just kind of go out and we forget about it. We get super passionate for like a minute, fire off something on social media, say it to a friend, whatever it does, and then it doesn't last. And it's, oh, look at us, the defender of the truth. Look at us, this boastful person who knows everything. So quick to change our profile pictures online. And then nothing. Nothing. James 2 warns us, this is James again talking about speaking. What good is it if you say you have faith and no deeds? Can such a faith save you? Suppose a brother or sister is without clothes and daily food. If one of you says to them, go in peace, be warm, be well fed, but does nothing about their physical needs, what good is it? In the same way, faith by itself, if not accompanied by action, is dead. Notice the words. Keep warm, great, be fit, well fed, my favorite, but then nothing, dead faith. You don't do it, you just say it. Go, be well, bless you. Isn't this a God's blessing? Amazing, all these blessings. Go be well fed. God has blessed me so much. He'll bless you too. Just go. You're great. Verse 22, if you're an underlining person, here's the thing to underline. Do not merely listen to the words so as to deceive yourself. Verse 26, those who do not keep a tight rein on their tongues deceive themselves. Deception, self-deception. Jesus quotes Old Testament prophet who quotes God saying, this people honors me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. Same thing. Religious talkity talk. Happens in churches all the time. Isn't it amazing that we're here? What a blessing to be here. Did you see that person that's hungry? Oh, yes. We told him to just go. We're coming to church this morning. It's the parable of the Good Samaritan all over again. Oh, yeah, you'll be fine. Probably your fault. Worthless religion talks a lot of lip service. All right. Pure religion acts. Second. James moves to the kind of faith that expresses what has happened inside of our heart. Okay, you've been born again, you've had rebirth, you actually know Jesus, you've confessed your sin to him, he's transforming your life. It's amazing. I was angry, now I'm not. I have addiction, now I'm just struggling, but I'm overcoming. I didn't know who I was, now I know who I am. I didn't know God created me, now I know he created me. Transform life. And now James boils it down to a list. 2 things, orphans and widows. Now, it would be wooden of me to say these are the only 2 groups that a church should take care of, and you just kind of need to check the box. I mean, James talks about the poor, James talks about the sick, but James does single out these 2 groups. And it's not like some new teaching. The Old Testament talks about this all the time. Exodus 22, the Lord, do not take advantage of the widow or the orphan. You have to be commanded not to do that because they're easily taken advantage of. God is a father to the fatherless, a defender of widows. That's Psalm 68. 5. In the Old Testament, over and over again, there's 4 groups mentioned, always, not always together, but almost always together. The fatherless, the widow, the poor, and the foreigner. Over and over again, those 4 groups, because those are the 4 groups that are outside of the power in a culture, and they need special attention. And most churches, of course, focus on 1 or 2 of those, maybe 3, but church, as you think of James' litmus test for the Christian life, have you passed? Can you check the box of, I'm transformed by Jesus? Someone becomes an orphan for all sorts of reasons. Mom and dad drink themselves to death. Mom and dad driving down the road and they crash the car and you live. There are plenty of reasons. Mom and dad are harming you. The government takes you out of the house. That's an orphan. But there's another kind of orphan, and that is the orphan who has not been born yet, whose mom is trying to terminate. Has no say, can't be heard, can be seen through an ultrasound. The most helpless person, the orphan in the womb. Now, the Bible gives us some kind of heads up about how to critique the state and its laws without becoming the state and making laws. Nathan confronts David, for example, in the Old Testament for his adultery and murder of Uriah. Elijah the prophet confronts Ahab for stealing a vineyard. John the Baptist confronts Herod the Tetrarch for his illicit marriage. Now, our country in particular has lost our minds on this issue. The United States is an outlier. I don't think people realize this when we think about this issue. We are only one of 10 countries in the whole world that allows it for abortion after 14 weeks. And we're one of 4 countries that allows for abortion after the baby is viable outside the womb. Those countries are the US, Canada, China, and North Korea. What a list. The number of abortions in the U.S. since Roe v. Wade is 62 million. That is the population of Kentucky, Oregon, Oklahoma, Connecticut, Iowa, Mississippi, Arkansas, Kansas, Utah, New Mexico, Nevada, West Virginia, Nebraska, Idaho, Maine, New Hampshire, Hawaii, Rhode Island, Montana, Delaware, South Dakota, Alaska, North Dakota, Vermont, Wyoming, and Illinois. There are 45 million abortions in the world every year. That's the entire state of California wiped off the map every single year. Now, Jane Roe's real name is Norma McCovey. In 1969, she was 22. She was divorced. She was homeless and pregnant for a 3rd time. She had given her first 2 children up for adoption. She goes into an adoption agency, and imagine this. I want to give my child up for adoption. And they introduce her to 2 lawyers. And the 2 lawyers want to challenge her on challenge the Texas statute about abortion. So they meet once over beer and pizza. The second time they give her an affidavit. She doesn't read it. They say, hey, you need to say you were raped. So she says I was raped when she wasn't. She doesn't even know what an abortion is. She thinks it's about flying in a plane. And so she just kind of leaves it. She doesn't know what happened. And then one day she reads in the paper the court case that was about her. Her baby had been born and put up for adoption already. Her life spirals down. She realizes what's happened. She works at an abortion clinic. And then one day she meets pro-lifers. She's walking in a park and the park is empty. And she realizes and she thinks to herself, this is empty because of me. There are no kids here. And she becomes pro-life for the rest of her life. The ruling from Justice Blackmun divided pregnancy into 3 trimesters. For the first 2, the state had no control over. In the 3rd one, it could intervene. But then a second case came down, Doe versus Bolton, which essentially allowed for abortion in any case for a woman's health. And that could include stress. And if any of you have been pregnant, you know the 3rd trimester has stress. And the statistics are hard to comprehend. For example, 1 in 2 black women have had abortions. 50%. One African-American preacher has lamented that between 1973 and 2002, 35% of the African-American population has been wiped out because of abortion. The founder of Planned Parenthood, Margaret Sanger, was a straight-up racist. She started the Negro Project, designed to reduce the births of black children, and her legacy is that 35% of the population is missing in the United States. 36% of all abortions are African American women. They make up 13% of the population. Latino American make up 13% of the population, 13% of the population and 20% of all abortions. It is targeted specifically to ethnic minorities, and it has wiped them out. 4 in 10 people who have an abortion claim to be evangelical. 9 out of 10 do it for financial reasons. In fact, most of the women that I've interacted with who've had abortions, it's all been about pressure. Pressure from family, pressure from boyfriend. It's not an American issue. In China, for example, there's 114 male births for every 100 female births. Japan is even stronger. Now, this whole argument of who an orphan is and the abortion in general boils down to definitions. You know, in the dictionary, Merriam-Webster. Does anyone look that up anymore except online? Just Google definition, right? In the real dictionary, they define abortion as the termination of pregnancy. Now, there's people who are in hospice care in our church right now. When they die and go to be with the Lord, I'm not going to say, this person died because of termination of hospice care. Let me show you exactly how this works. During a debate between Scott Klusendorf, who wrote Case for Life, and a former president of the ACLU, Nadine Stroessman, Nadine says this, what I mean by reproductive freedom is that every woman should choose whether or not to have children based on her religious belief. And Scott then responds, men and women, I agree with her completely. Abortion is personal, private, shouldn't be restricted. She is right that we should not interfere. She is right that pro-lifers should stay out of the decision. I agree if the unborn is not a human being. This is the issue of image of God again. Scott says, I am pro-choice that she should choose her health care, choose her school, choose her husband, choose her job, choose her career, choose her religion, but some choices are wrong, like killing a human being. And this is what it boils down to. What is a human? What is that thing that a mom is carrying? You know, if you've seen countries like Sweden, for example, they're just celebrating. We don't have any children with Down syndrome anymore. Why is that? Because they've aborted all of them. I remember a friend of mine who got asked for a test for Down syndrome, and it came back probable, and the doctor said, so what do you want to do? What do you want to do? I remember seeing my own children, 16 weeks, hands moving, flipping, making weird faces that they would make when they would get out of the womb. And then I remember holding them a week after, grunting, sneezing, pooping, peeing, all these things, right? You're just so happy. They're pooping. It's amazing. You're a dad. And just a week earlier, I could have taken their life. When Amy, and this is personal for me, when my wife was 5 months pregnant, we went in for an ultrasound for Josiah, and they said, oh, your child's hands, oh, your child's feet, here's your child's head, we're not going to tell you sex, thank you. Okay, here's your child's, they're moving around, child, and here's your child's heart, pause. Boom, ultrasound says 10 minutes, silence. We need to call the doctor. Doctor comes in. Amy's got tears in her eyes. I'm a buffoon. I'm like, just relax, Amy. Everything's fine. Anytime a husband says relax to a wife with tears, don't do that. You're going to end up in my office talking about your marriage, okay? Now, the doctor says to us, hey, there's a tumor on the heart, and if this fetus is a management problem for you, you have options. Okay. Child, management problem because there was a tumor on the heart. Now, some of you may have met Josiah. He is a management problem, I think, in some ways. He's 9 now. He was laughing in the back, thinking of my life. No tumor on his heart. Is he not a kid? If the government accepts abortion on demand, it will incentivize it. It will incentivize it through the medical community. Another woman tells about a doctor seeing genetic abnormalities when he was checking her, and they said, we need to rush you to a genetic specialist. I said, well, what's the rush? The baby's coming. Well, you need to know just in case you want to end the pregnancy. And I tried to tell them, we don't want to end the pregnancy. They said, well, you might change your mind. And she wrote, we felt pressure from the medical community that's supposed to protect life to take the life of my own child. And so my son, Josiah, was only my son and a baby if I wanted him. That's the pro-choice argument. Remember back to the early Christians. Their ethic is created because they know that every human has rights because they are made in the image of God. Now, Peter Singer, who's an ethicist at Princeton, argues for the opposite. And let me show you how far he takes it, because it's the only logical way to go. He will argue that human beings are only human based on their capacities, That's why he thinks abortion should be legal, because they're not human beings, because they can't live apart from their mother, because they can't reason morally. So because of that, they're not actually humans. But then he says, if you believe that, then let me take it a step further. Newborn children don't have those capacities either. They don't have a right to life. People who are old and senile do not have a right to life. Neither do the mentally handicapped people. Now, this is Princeton University ethicist. This is public. People get mad at him for saying this, but he's just taking the logical step down. If you don't believe in the image of God and people have intrinsic value, not because they can throw a ball or they're super smart or they have Down syndrome, you don't rank it that way, but you rank it because they have value because of how God has made them. When you separate that out, you can do all sorts of things. And you can start euthanizing people who are older and the mentally handicapped. And that's exactly what Europe is doing now. We're not that far behind. Abortion is not political. It's a God issue. This is about who you are, these orphans. Now, my friend, Jonathan Rund, he used to teach ethics at a community college. And if you've taken ethics across the street, you've heard this stuff, I'm sure. Students and people who've gone to school, these are the arguments. Read Peter Singer. What do you think? He would talk about human rights, and everyone would have their views, abortion, what makes someone human. Everyone would argue over and over again, right? And then he would bring his daughter Allison to class. Allison was severely handicapped in a wheelchair her whole life, couldn't talk, could barely communicate, and the students, bang, would change their tune. They're going to tell their teacher that last week he could murder his daughter. Kids teach you things that you can't live for yourself. Think of my son Josiah. Was I ready to deal with a severely handicapped kid? This joyful surrender of my time. And even if it didn't happen, in my mind thinking to myself, okay, all my theology is right, but am I going to turn to Amy and say, well, what do you think? I'm glad those words didn't come out of my mouth, but they did go through my head. Are you looking after these orphans, as James would say, in their distress? It confronts me. It's easy to read books on this. It's easy to talk about it. There was a famous quip by a liberal, Barney Frank, who was quite I wish you guys who were younger could have heard Barney Frank. He would say, conservatives believe life begins at conception and ends at birth. And what he meant is conservatives don't care about born children. They care about picket lines. Okay, born children. There are 150 million orphans in the world. There are 143 million orphans that spend an average of 10 years in orphanages. Mr. Chris, who is up here, grew up in an orphanage. It impacted his life in tremendous ways. He even wrote this book about it. I've got it here, Throwaway Kids, where he talks about the kids that were essentially thrown away and put in the orphanage. He closed that orphanage in Montana from this book. In Ukraine, 10 to 15% of children who age out of adoption homes or orphanages commit suicide before 18. 60% end up in prostitution. The foster statistics in the U.S. are overwhelming. In 2006, 510,000 kids lived in foster care. 70% of the prison system was former foster care children. 70 to 75% of them had been in prostitution, drugs, or drug dealing. And here comes the command of James onto the church. Are we the place to care for the fatherless or not? Adoption is a reflection of who we are as Christians. God adopts us. He says, I belong to the Father. The Father is now my Father. I have a friend who adopted, and one of the first things that happened, his son started eating peanut butter, and he freaked out because he was allergic to peanut butter. And he thought to himself, whoa, wait, he's not my biological kid, but it never actually went through his mind. He's my son. He might be allergic like I might be allergic. The same man was taking his kids out of the orphanage in Russia. Kid scared, of course, and just put his arm around him and whispered to him and said, this place is a dump. Where you're going is much better. That is adoption. That is our adoption, as when God comes to us and looks at our life and says, hey man, your life is an absolute dump. Come with me now. There's something much better. Religious people miss out on this. the talkers. If you're not a Christian, you don't even know what you're missing. Of course, there's hard questions, the messiness of it all. What should you adopt across race, special needs, or healthy kids, whatever. There's so many hard questions. But bottom line is, what should we do when it's not just this? Oh, I'm pro-life. That's talk. I think we should, one, hold up Christ first. Sometimes we get our ethical arguments backwards, like, get your life together, then come to Jesus. Let's talk about racism and then come to Jesus. Let's talk about poverty and then come to Jesus, instead of flipping it around. Now, I'm going to read one story here from a pastor, and I'm not sure I even agree with his approach, but see the heart behind it. He says, a woman once came to me after several months of me preaching and said, hey, I have a question. Do you think abortion is wrong? I mean, I don't get these questions in like the summer, someone just randomly coming up to me. And I said, yeah, I do. And he said, well, I'm beginning to see that it might be wrong. And now that I'm a Christian, start studying the faith. And so I began to ask her, and I realized she's an Ivy League graduate. She was a lawyer. She was an active member of the ACLU. She volunteered. She had 3 abortions. And she said to me, I want you to know that if I had seen all the literature about pro-life movement, I probably would have only been here one service and left. But because you hit me with Christ, I found faith in Christ. And I just want to say how much I appreciate you doing it in that order. I'm not sure if I would follow his approach, but do you see the heart behind it? You hold up Christ to those who have had abortions, to the men who have pressured women to have abortions, to parents who have pressured their kids to have abortions, to boyfriends who've pressured their girlfriend to have abortion, to the teenager who's fearing the consequences of her pregnancy. Most women who've had abortions indicate they are Christians, and the church then should be the place of mercy, forgiveness, kindness. And if it's not, you're not going to win anyone. You're just going to yell at people. You're not going to win someone over. Grace, kindness, and forgiveness. And then you say to them, I have sinned in horrible ways. And yes, God judges sin. And he will judge legislatures and doctors and moms and boyfriends. He will judge them. And then you'll say, and he will judge me too. And here are all my sins. And I have come to Jesus Christ. And I look at the cross. And you know what he says to me? You are no longer condemned, and I have forgotten and removed that sin from you. So any guilt you may feel is now removed, and your identity is not, I had an abortion. My identity is now, I am forgiven in Christ. So we start with Jesus. Second, everyone in this room is an orphan. Christ offers adoption to everyone. But some of us must be involved in adoption in some way. It's a lot of worthless talk to just say, oh yeah, I love adoption stories and I hate there being orphans. That's talk. Sometimes I feel like people are more excited about adopting animals than people. Don't misunderstand, not everyone should adopt. Not everyone can adopt, but you can give money. You can help parents of adopters. You can create a fund in this church for families who want to adopt. We should be leading the way on these issues. Helping in these issues. I think we tend to think of it passively, like if an adoption opportunity comes to me, I'll take it, but I'm not going to actively seek it out, the 100 million orphans in the world. Or maybe we trumpet foster care. I know of a church, 2 churches. The first church went to CPS and said, how many kids you got? 150. We're going to take it. They laughed. They put out the call to the church. 150 families showed up. They took all the kids off the foster care roster in their county. I know in Austin, Texas, all the churches in Austin, Texas banded together, took all the orphans, all the adoptees, all the foster kids off the list. Maybe we just try the Valley. Maybe we just try Montana and try to zero it out. It could mean just volunteering at Zoe Care, caring for women after a baby is born, supporting legislation, especially to help single moms, supporting legislation that could help the most people get out of poverty. I mean, this week, a pro-choice legislature, a guy tried to get a gotcha moment on the pro-life movement, said, okay, I want to pass a law, you pro-lifers, that says men are financially responsible from the moment of conception. And he got so much blowback from the pro-lifers, like, congratulations, you're now pro-life, that he actually retreated. Say, I don't want to be associated with those people. Roe will be overturned. That doesn't change much. It's just going to mean states can make their own choices. Abortion will continue. So, bottom line, let's stop the lip service about abortion and about orphans. Maybe someone here pricked by the Spirit this morning says, I will be the one to mobilize. I will be the one that will take up the mantle, and that this church in the community will be known as a community that has adopted people, that has welcomed in orphans, that has taken in foster care children, that takes care of single moms who are having children whose husbands have abandoned them, who just lift up kids in general, and that the community goes, what the heck is going over there? Let's do something on this Right to Life Sunday. Let's pray. Father, heavy topics, and most importantly, the gospel is for all who wish to believe. It provides identity, forgiveness, adoption, changes people from anger to joy, addiction to freedom. The story is told over and over and over again, and people just don't know what they're missing until they find Jesus. And so may the people here whose defense mechanisms are up find Jesus this morning through the love of the Christians in this room, through the forgiveness of Jesus. May this community, may this church, may the churches in the valley wipe out the list of kids waiting to be adopted. May they wipe out the list of children waiting to get into the foster care system. May money come in to support families who want to adopt and pay the price. May we not hold up the adoption of animals over the adoption of children. May we not be like the world. We want to do this because you've transformed our lives, not because of a